I call Senator Roberts.
Thank you. The Albanese Labor government is selling students a con job. This isn't a HECS refund. It's just taking students back to where they started before government caused the inflation crisis. I'll say that again. This isn't a HECS refund. It's just taking students backwards to where they started before government caused the inflation crisis. On the original HECS indexation rates, HECS debts would have been indexed 23% since COVID or 2020. 23%. Accounting for recent cuts, this figure is still 18%. While Labor keeps posting TikTok saying, "You're getting a 20% cut," the reality is you're only getting 2% discount on the 2020 balance, at best. The Albanese government's student debt reduction is fiscally irresponsible, lazy, vote-buying, and does nothing to address underlying issues in university education. These changes are reported to cost $16 billion in forgiven debt. This adds to roughly $3 billion in forgiveness from changes to indexation rates in relation to high COVID inflation that came into effect in December 2024. This $19 billion goes on to the national debt. It goes on to the national debt, on which all taxpayers pay a far higher amount of interest than HECS debt indexation. Those who've got university degrees and those who haven't all pay. Taxpayers who are more likely than not going to the people with degrees are going to have to pay back that national debt, and then some. It's just shifting the debt from your HECS account to the tax you'll have to pay in the future. When it comes to HECS debt, many young people have signed up to take on a huge amount of debt, often for degrees that fail to deliver on the university's promise of a high-paying job in the future. That's what universities promise. Standards of tertiary education have continued to deteriorate. Indoctrination has become more important than education, and promised job prospects have failed to materialise for many students. Meanwhile, the universities and their extravagantly paid vice-chancellors are laughing all the way to the bank. In 2020, the heads of 16 of Australia's 41 universities each earned more than $1 million a year, more than the head of the world's best university, Oxford. A number of Australia's universities generate more than $2 billion a year in revenue. The universities face no accountability for the quality of teaching they pump out. Under the HECS system, the government pays the university up front. The government pays the university up front, while the student pays the debt back to government for the rest of their life. Tertiary education has turned into an extremely lucrative government-guaranteed cash cow, with students holding the debt for degrees that fail to deliver quality teaching or the promise of a good, stable job. Many courses are being delivered with pre-recorded lectures that are many years old. Delivering degrees is getting cheaper, so course fees should be getting cheaper too. But they're not. One Nation would cut the fees for subjects that use repeated, pre-recorded lectures and large numbers of group assignments. The increasing use of group assignments so that universities can pay for less assessors per course is another real issue. In these group assignments, students are frequently grouped with foreign international students on which universities rely for even more income. English standards are not being strictly enforced, so Australian students find themselves having to do the entire group's work or watch their grades suffer as a group result. One Nation will strictly enforce English standards for international students so that universities aren't sacrificing Australian educations to increase profit from international students to the detriment of Australian students. Our universities should be focused on delivering a good education for Australian students first. That's the first priority. There are still big problems with the way HECS debts are indexed, though. Employers withhold extra tax from HECS debtors on every pay under the pay-as-you-go withholding scheme. While extra tax has been withheld every pay cycle, the extra tax paid is only deducted from the study debts once the person's tax return has been lodged. The earliest someone can do this is the 1st of July. HECS debt, however, are indexed earlier on the larger balance before the payment on June 1st. This means that despite the student paying extra tax for their HECS all through the year and the government holding that money for HECS at the time, the indexation rate is applied to the larger balance without that withheld tax applied, which would reduce the interest added on top of it in indexation. This is grossly and inherently unfair and deceptive. If the government is holding someone's money for HECS repayments, that money should be applied to the balance before indexation is applied. To do otherwise, which is what the government's doing, is theft. Nothing in this bill fixes this unfair situation. We've raised this issue of theft before, and still the government continues to steal from students. Finally, One Nation believes universities should be made accountable for the degrees they deliver. One Nation believes universities should publish the average salaries of graduates from their degrees 1 year, 5 years and 10 years after graduation, so that future students know what they're signing up for. Is the debt going to be worth doing the degree? This could be done per university and per individual course, anonymously and in aggregate, giving everyone clear data on what future job prospects they can expect without divulging identities. This is possible already. Simply link the unique student identifier and their course with the student's tax file number and their salary reported to the Taxation Office. In summary, the government's HECS bill is a con job. It's a con job. It only returns balances back to where they were right before COVID arrived. That's all. The debt is just transferred to the national debt, which taxpayers like uni graduates will have to eventually pay down with higher taxes. This bill does nothing to make sure Australian university students get an education that's actually worthwhile. It does nothing. One Nation will vote against this bill because we do not want a con job reduction. We want a better life for university students. We want a better life for university students, and this bill does not do that. A life that doesn't mean a forever debt for a degree that never lives up to its promises. One Nation wants students to get value, education and value. Thank you.